We begin with some breaking news here in Ecuador, where the Constitutional Court has legalized same-sex marriage. After 4 hours of debate and with 5 votes in favor and 4 against, the court decided to go through with gay marriage in the country. The Constitutional Court had been asked by a lower court to adopt the language of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, which recognizes marriage regardless of sex. Ecuador will now join countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina, where same-sex marriage is legal. We'll have more details for you as the story develops. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez has begun his tour of the Caribbean ahead of this Friday's Caricom-Cuba ministerial meeting to be held in Guyana. The first stop on Tuesday was Trinidad and Tobago, where Minister Rodriguez met with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and his Foreign Minister Dennis Moses. All parties reaffirmed the good status of bilateral relations and historical bonds of friendship that unite both countries. To further strengthen relations with the region, Minister Rodriguez will visit St. Lucia and Barbados. The tour of Caribbean countries will last until June 18th. Our correspondent in Port of Spain, Kijan Hayes, has the details.
Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez has just wrapped a visit with Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Also in attendance was Minister of Foreign Affairs Dennis Moses. According to the Office of the Prime Minister, both parties committed to continuing to strengthen the historic bonds of friendship and cooperation between the two nations. Trinidad and Tobago and Cuba have had diplomatic ties since 1972, and they've gotten stronger ever since. Cuba and Trinidad and Tobago are, of course, partners in domestic trade and exchange in healthcare. And what else is we also understanding is that there is supposed to be a multi-trip tour for Mr. Rodriguez. He's going to St. Lucia, Guyana, and Barbados. When he's in Guyana, he's expected to address a CARICOM meeting. We also understand that the president of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel, has issued an invitation for Prime Minister Dr. Rowley to visit Cuba. We're not sure if he's accepted that invitation just yet.
We thank you, Jen, for that report. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has visited St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and according to him, has observed significant growth since his last trip 17 years ago. Crowds gathered outside the country's House of Assembly on Wednesday to welcome him. He was accompanied by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. Speaking on the first day of his 2-day official visit, Akufo-Addo said the first thing he noticed was a larger airport. Meanwhile, he congratulated St. Vincent on securing a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council. The West African leader will travel on to Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Jamaica. And on Tuesday, the Ghanaian leader also visited Guyana, where he extended an offer of collaboration in areas of oil development.
We've heard the good news too of the recent discovery of large deposits of oil and gas offshore Guyana. We should explore promptly the possibility of establishing a joint vehicle to assist in the effective initial management of oil and gas revenue.
Hundreds of protesters in Brazil marched to the public ministry's offices in Sao Paulo to demand the release of former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. This followed the revelations made on Monday of a conspiracy to block Lula from taking part in last year's elections by the Justice Minister and then Judge Sergio Moro.
Holding candles, protesters took to the streets of Sao Paulo to condemn the alleged crimes committed by prosecutors in the Lava Jato task force and the Minister of Justice, Sergio Moro. Among the revelations made by the Intercept news outlet were numerous attempts at preventing the Workers' Party from returning to power and collusion between the then Judge Moro and the prosecutors of the Lava Jato task force.
One of the biggest questions to come from these revelations is whether Judge Moro was impartial in his ruling. There obviously was wrongdoing on his part, so his ruling has to be questioned.
David spent 1 year in the Lula Libre camp, outside the prison where Lula is being held in Curitiba. The Intercept bombshell revelations shocked him, but they also gave him hope.
I was shocked when the article came out with all the leaks. I was very happy because I've been on the front lines of this fight. I want to see Lula be set free, because he was the president that did the most for Brazil.
Many suspect that within the 3 years' worth of leaks by The Intercept, the complicity of media giant Rede Globo with the Lava Jato team could be proven.
We don't know what new revelations could be next. Who was also involved in this scheme?
Outside the public ministry, protesters demanded a thorough investigation into the justice minister and the case against Lula da Silva.
They sentenced Lula when he didn't commit any crime. Even the lead prosecutor admitted he had serious doubts about the links between Lula, Petrobras, and the apartment he allegedly received as a bribe.
An investigation has already been opened into the members of Lava Jato team. On June 19, Minister Sergio Moro will have to testify in front of the Senate's Constitutional Commission. As for former President Lula, the Supreme Court is set to vote on an habeas corpus request on June 25th, which could very likely lead to his freedom.
After the break, a journalist has been killed in Colombia and Bolivia's opposition parties demonstrate in La Paz. Stay with us. Welcome back. Peru loses more than $5 billion per year due to corruptions. And schools, hospitals, and other public services often face multiple budget cuts. Let's find out more.
In Santo Domingo de los Olleros, in the south of Lima, 8,000 Peruvians live without access to drinking water or electricity. Their only school operates inside containers. When people approach authorities asking for anything, the answer is always, there is no budget.
We live a little far away, and authorities don't come here. They don't give themselves the time to visit our homes. They go where the money is, and that's where they focus the most. So, who care about us? Nobody. They're not interested in us. There are 8,000 people, but unfortunately nobody cares.
The people of Vista Alegre in the district of Chorrillos have waited for years for government funds. In spite of having 15,000 inhabitants, their only available healthcare center has only one doctor working 1 6-hour shift.
There's only one doctor. It's not enough. Look at how many people there are here. Our children get sick and there's no one to treat them.
As the government denies resources to these areas, Peru loses more than $5 billion a year due to corruption, according to the Comptroller's Office. As such, various urgent projects are often put aside and forgotten.
We should at least have a food program for children up to 3 years old. The retirement program should be extended to all citizens over 65 years old. Every senior citizen should be getting a pension.
The cost of corruption equals 10% of yearly public spending, a figure that could easily allow the government to double the salaries of all public workers in the health and education sectors.
Bolivia's opposition parties held a demonstration in La Paz to demand the resignation of the members of the Supreme Electoral Court. Meanwhile, the government is warning about attempts at boycotting the elections on October 20th.
What Bolivia's opposition hoped would be a great demonstration to demand the resignation of the Supreme Electoral Court turned out to be a modest protest. But they warned that their movement has just begun.
The pressure will rise and we will continue our initiatives all across the country because we strongly believe that there should be an independent court for democracy to be trustworthy.
We want the court to go, so we are joining in all mobilizations. Let's hope that with this demonstration the court considers our demands and makes way for a court of important people who can guarantee a free election.
Political leaders and opposition candidates warned that the pressure against the Electoral Court is not affecting their campaigns as they have an eye on the October 20th elections.
Of course we are going to return in the elections. It would be a mistake to assume that if the court doesn't resign we wouldn't participate. happy. It's a decisive election for the future of all Latin America.
We've come from all across Bolivia, bringing our message to the Electoral Court, that people know they're not impartial and that we won't let them steal our vote and derail democracy.
For their part, the government warned that due to their lack of citizen support, the opposition could be planning to boycott the electoral process.
Besides fighting each other, they have been campaigning both here and abroad. At first it seems they were just the usual ways of presenting their proposals and weren't planning on cheating. But now it's different. As their numbers continue to drop, it seems they will try anything to take the elections. This is a very dangerous situation, and we strongly reject any attempts at wrongdoing.
The opposition has continuously remarked on the alleged illegality of the candidacy of President Evo Morales, and now they are demanding the resignation of the members of the Supreme Electoral Court. General elections are going to be held on October 20th, and so far there are 9 candidates in the running.
A journalist has been killed in the Nariño department in Colombia. Libardo Montenegro was 40 years old and worked for community radio station Samaniego Estéreo. He was shot close to his work by unknown assailants. Authorities are working on a lead that the murder was linked to a complaint made by the journalist against irregular armed groups. Along with the journalist, there are now 15 human rights defenders murdered in the department of Nariño so far in 2019. And staying in Colombia, the FARC member Jesus Santrich has taken his seat in a committee of the Colombian Senate, but the ruling party, Democratic Center, decided to walk out as an act of protest. This comes a day after Santrich was formally sworn in as a senator. Santrich was facing an extradition request by the U.S. last month, but was eventually released by the Supreme Court due to lack of evidence. Amputees in St. Lucia and the Eastern Caribbean can now benefit from access to affordable prosthetic limbs manufactured in the island. It's a project by the National Council for Persons with Disabilities and comes amid what officials describe as alarming amputation statistics due to diabetes. Our correspondent in St. Lucia, Alison Ketnish, has more.
Francis Felix lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. He now spends his days manufacturing prosthetic limbs at a small workshop housed in the office of St. Lucia's National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities. The workshop is the first of its kind for the Eastern Caribbean and provides modern and affordable prosthetics to amputees, many of whom lost limbs to illness or accidents. Felix took Telesur on a tour of the facility and showed us how the small team gives amputees a second chance to walk and smile again.
I start by folding, wrapping it all around. You mustn't put it too tight. You must have it in a safe angle. If it is dry there right now, I'll pull this one off, that we may have the impression that we need. I pull it off this way. This is called the powder of Paris or molding powder. So I mix it in water, mix it properly, then I put back in here. Checks. I put it back in here, and I left it to get hard. It have to get hard. When it get hard, then I cut it off. I cut off, so which means I'll have this.
The next stage involves melting the plastic that will go over the mold of the limb, resulting in what is known as a check socket, which is fitted onto the client once more to ensure that it is comfortable. The team grinds the edges of the socket and uses the original mold for laminating. The end result of a long process is an artificial limb and a new lease on life. After the final fit, team members help the amputee to learn to stand tall and walk strong.
When you walk, try to get your foot ahead of the bad ones. Yeah. Send your walker up front enough that you may, right. We're going to this direction of the parallel bar. Yeah, take your time and be patient.
21-year-old Danelle Frederick lost his right leg when he was just 16 as a result of a massive tumor. He says this life-changing ordeal taught him that in a wink of an eye, anyone can become disabled. For him, The center provides a new lease on life for amputees.
It feels great because now I can do the things I couldn't have done. I could even go to work, I can run, I can climb trees, I can do many different things. But I have to say, like, thanks to NTPD, I'm glad that I'm grateful for a leg and I could move forward with that.
Artificial limbs were until recently beyond the financial reach of most people who have had amputations. With this program, amputees can now purchase an artificial limb for less than $4,000.
It is a sad reality that persons with disabilities are among the poorest of the population. In St. Lucia especially, we have high incidence of diabetes, so the number of amputations taking place is alarming, especially of lower limbs. So we have many poor persons who are losing their legs as a result of diabetes and who need rehabilitation, who desire to walk again.
For the technicians who are also amputees, it is rewarding work to see the joy on someone's face when they get a chance to walk again.
I like to help people because if I have a leg, I can't walk. I want the people to walk too.
The project began with a small grant from the Australian government and has attracted support from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Rotary Club of Grosley. Partnerships built on helping people to walk again. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
Coming up after the break, 2 more cases of Ebola in Uganda have been confirmed, and Kazakhstan's new president calls for dialogue with protesters. Stay with us. Welcome back. Nigerians celebrated New Democracy Day in Abuja on Wednesday. Nigerian president led the celebrations marking the election of Moshood Abiola in 1993 as the first democratically elected government. Nigeria previously celebrated the restoration of democracy annually on May 29th, but last year Buhari declared June 12th as the New Democracy Day. June 12th has a huge significance for Nigerians. It was on this date in 1993 the presidential elections were held for the first time since the 1983 military coup.
With leadership and sense of purpose, we can lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years.
I think the president means well, and he has great projects lined up for the growth and development of our country. We wish him the best, we back him up, we support him as our leader, and we look forward to a greater Nigeria this year.
Uganda's health ministry has confirmed 2 more cases of Ebola in Uganda after the virus claimed the life of a 5-year-old boy. The 2 patients whose blood samples tested positive for the virus are relatives of the boy. He is said to have traveled over the border from the Democratic Republic of Congo on a Sunday, where more than 2,000 Ebola cases have been confirmed in the last 10 months. Ugandan and DRC officials, along with representatives from the WHO, are meeting in Kasese district to discuss a joint response to the threat.
On the
Ugandan side, they carried out a thorough investigation. They identified 8 contacts, 8 people who were in contact with this family. The Ugandan authorities will vaccinate all 8 contacts from this Friday and also ensure that all health professionals in this district are vaccinated.
Mali's prime minister has pledged to step up security and reconciliation efforts after recent ethnic violence left 95 people dead. Survivors from the Dogon tribe say the perpetrators arrived on motorbikes and trucks surrounding the village of roughly 300 people. The killings came less than 3 months after nearly 160 members of the Fulani ethnic group were murdered.
What happened here is a tragedy. It's a tragedy for Mali, a tragedy for humanity. It was important that we come here on behalf of the president to express our condolences, communing, giving a bit of compassion.
Kazakhstan's new president has called for dialogue with protesters as many continue demonstrating against his election. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev dominated Sunday's presidential ballot, taking 71% of the vote, but protesters say the vote was rigged as he was handpicked by former President Nursultan Nazarbayev as his successor. The government has blamed the demonstrations on Kazakh banker Mukhtar Alsabayov, who has been urging people to take to the streets. Wednesday marked a fourth day of violent protest in Hong Kong in what many are calling the worst political unrest in the region since the end of British colonial rule. The violence started early on Sunday and has escalated as thousands of protesters have clashed with security forces. As a result, the government was forced to delay debate on a highly contentious bill which would allow for extraditions to mainland China. The bill was proposed by the government as a measure to fix recently discovered loopholes which allow Hong Kong to become a haven for fugitives of the law. Hong Kong's chief executive has described the ongoing protests as organized riots and has called for peace to return to the streets.
Throughout the day, everyone has seen the saddening scenes, the rioting actions that damage peaceful society. Ignoring law and discipline is unacceptable for any civilized societies. It's obvious that these are not peaceful rallies, but openly organized riots. It's impossible that these are actions of loving Hong Kong. I hope the society can be restored to order as soon as possible. I also hope to not see any more injured in the riots. I urge all the people who love this place to stay away from violence. I deeply believe Hong Kong as a civilized society can still use peaceful, rational, and lawful approach in the interests of Hong Kong as a whole to solve any problems.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.